This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We are officially into championship week across college football, a fresh set of college football playoff rankings, and some really fun games to settle the conference championships this week. We're going to break down those key matchups, letting you know our thoughts on the SEC championship game, the Big Ten championship game, talk a little ACC as well, best bets on the board, and of course, some playoff rankings talk by talking to Riley Thomas of FanDuel Research, picking his brain on the best bets for this week. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I'm a managing editor at FanDuel Research, joined here once again by Riley Thomas. You can find him on X at _Riley8. You can find his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a writer for us. Riley, it is here. It is college football conference championship week. How are you doing today?
A little bummed out from that Ohio State loss this past week, but unfortunately I'm getting used to it now. But a lot of exciting games this weekend, so still a lot to look forward to.
But you're still rocking the Buckeye hat. I respect it.
Support no matter what. Got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. You've got like the Christmas tree in the background, so I feel like that helps at least. Like, it's hard to be like super, super down when it's like Christmas season at least. So at least like you've got that to kind of console you, I guess, in this difficult time.
Oh, absolutely. I got a lot to look forward to no matter what. I get very festive this time of year, so plenty to be excited about.
That is good. And I guess like I had a very different reaction to that game on Saturday because my stepdad is a huge Michigan fan. He was at the game. He bet the Michigan money line as well. So like it was happiness all around there. My sister's a student at Ohio State, so she was not quite as pleased. So divided household. I'm not going to get like one of those household divided flags that has Michigan and Ohio State like logos on it. That seems aggressive and sacrilegious. But we had rooting interest across the board there. And, I think that it was at least interesting. If you're not a Buckeye fan, I think like the idea of just watching that game and watching it play out would have been at least kind of enjoyable there. Yeah.
I tend to see the other side. I just growing up, I've had a lot of like friends and stuff that were Michigan fans. Actually, I'll probably have a house divided flag one time eventually. My girlfriend, she's a Michigan fan. So
could you negotiate for her to make do you think she could budge on a Kentucky one instead of Michigan or instead of Ohio State? Or would she be okay accepting of the Ohio State half of your fandom?
At this point, I think we're accepted, but she turned into Kentucky basketball too. So we're all good.
Hey, if you said that's kind of gotten you on the Detroit Lions, that's a positive. So we're still thankful in this season, at least, to have we can all cheer for Jared Goff, even if we can't quite cheer for the same college football teams there. Today, we're going to go through the biggest games across this weekend and break down Riley's thoughts, what he thinks about the betting odds for those games over at FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll talk about reactions to last night's the bracket reveal as well, the updated rankings there, thoughts in Alabama, Miami, and any futures we want to grab there as well, and then dive into Riley's best bets across this championship weekend at FanDuel Sportsbook. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Back with you once again tomorrow. Dubs Anderson will join me breaking down his thoughts on NFL week number 14, his best bets there across the key games. We'll talk to Dubs about that tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern on this same YouTube page and over on Covering the Spread as well. Player props with Austin Swaim coming up on Friday. I gave my thoughts on every NFL week 14 game on the feed yesterday too. So Covering the Spread, wherever you get your podcast to find that, hit subscribe. And if you like what you hear, give us a 5-star rating and review. And as mentioned tomorrow, that show, the NFL Week 14 Best Bet Show, will be live with Dubs Anderson, 4 p.m. Eastern on this YouTube page. Subscribe there, enable notifications, and leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those who have done so already. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, where 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chattanooga, Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Riley, let's begin things by talking about last night's ranking reveal for the college football playoff. Obviously, people up in arms, as they will be every single year until the end of time. No matter how big the playoff is, people will be mad. But I want to talk to you. Any last-minute bets you want to grab before we dive into the championship slate?
Yeah, so as far as the lines go for picking the exact order of these top 4 seeds, so teams who are getting a bye, the favorite here at the plus 600 is just assuming that all the favorites win this weekend. Highly doubt that happens. We know the crazy world of college football. So my favorite line out of all this is going to be Oregon as the 1 seed, Texas as the 2, Boise State as the 3, and then Arizona State at the 4. It's plus 1,100. So obviously getting a lot more value there compared to that the favorite at plus 600. But I just don't think this is too far-fetched. I'll talk about it a little later when we get to the this game, but Clemson and SMU, I can see this kind of turning into a track meet. And once you get into shootouts, kind of turns into a toss-up. So I can easily see Clemson winning that game if that's the case. I really love Arizona State this week. Something else we'll get to later. But if they were to win, I'm assuming Boise State's going to move up and still be ahead of them with the way they have their rankings right now. So I think that's really pretty realistic, and we're getting good value there, in my opinion.
Yeah, 11-1, as Riley mentioned, that's the Oregon first seed. Second is Texas. Third, Boise State. Fourth, Arizona State. You mentioned the 6-1 one where we assume the chalk wins out, especially this year in college football. We've seen massive swings. There are no big spreads at all on the board for this week either. So I think it makes sense to expect additional chaos for this week as well. So let's dive into that SEC championship game first. That is Georgia versus Texas right now, FanDuel Sportsbook. Texas favored by 2.5. Total in this game sitting at 49.5 right now. We saw this game in Austin, and Georgia was pretty dominant there. That was kind of the start of the Carson Beck backslide where all the interceptions began. Has slowly kind of maybe sort of gotten things turned around, I guess, at times. But what are you expecting here in the rematch between Georgia and Texas?
Yeah, so going back to the previous matchup that you mentioned, the biggest thing with that game that really surprised me, of course, was just, first of all, the carelessness from Texas, the turnovers. You had 3 turnovers in the first half, obviously a big factor in them trailing 23 at halftime. But the biggest thing in that to me was the way their offensive line played. I think Georgia's pass rush has been pretty streaky throughout the year. At times it's kind of been a question mark. Was firmly a question mark going to that game the first time, in my opinion. And I still firmly believe Texas has the best offensive line in the country, 2 first-round caliber offensive tackles, and they just did not play well that game. Ewers was under a lot of pressure. Georgia finished with 7 sacks in that game. So that's not something that I think is going to happen again. Now my biggest concern for Texas in this is Kelvin Banks, their best offensive lineman, his status is kind of up in the air after hurting his ankle last week against Texas A&M. If he's able to go, I like Texas to cover this. We're getting a good number here at 2.5. If you look at some prediction models out there, such as NumberFire, they have Texas by 4. College Football Nerds has Texas by 7. So I think we're seeing some stuff out there that also points to a cover. And honestly, I mean, as we always see in college football with just teams' identities and things like that, Texas's offense looks a lot different now than what it did when they played Georgia the first time. They're running the ball a lot more over the last month. I believe it's pronounced Quintravion. Yeah, Quintravion Wisner. They're Texas's top back right now. He's kind of come out of nowhere over the last month, and he's been really, really good. He's over 170 rushing yards per game in his last 2. Is that something that's going to happen against Georgia? Probably not. But I still like the over for his prop, which is set at 86.5 rushing yards. So just kind of expecting that Georgia doesn't get as much pressure in this game. I don't see Texas turning over the ball as much, which is just going to help them not get in such a big deficit where they can't run the ball like in the first time they played. So I just think when Texas is going to have the ability to run the ball in this game, I feel pretty good about them covering, especially when you look at Georgia. The only two top 10 teams they've seen in EPA per rushing attempt is Alabama and Texas. Of course, Texas couldn't really run the ball because of the turnovers. When Alabama played Georgia, they had over 170 rushing yards, over 5 yards per carry. Of course, Georgia lost that by 7. So I wouldn't be surprised if this game kind of looks similar to that final in Alabama-Georgia. I don't think Texas is going to come out winning by 30 like we saw in that game, but I could see Texas coming out of this with about a 7-point win.
Yeah, right now FanDuel Sportsbook, as you mentioned, the 2.5 is there. It is minus 115 to lay the 2.5. There are the prop you mentioned over 86.5 rushing yards for Wisner, minus 114 as of right now. You mentioned the way that game broke down and how Texas is making all these mistakes. They couldn't quite get that push up front because of the offensive line injuries. Do you want to wait until we get more confirmation on the health up front before you place that, with the concern being that maybe they kind of duplicate the same issues that cropped up there? Do you want to hold off before placing this bet as a result of that, or are you okay enough taking it right now as things stand?
It's definitely wise. Me personally, I would wait until we have a better idea. Risky, of course, because if we do get some solid confirmation that Banks is going to be good to go, we could see this move more in the favor of Texas. Right. If I had to do it now, I'm okay waiting, because even if it moves, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Texas win this by about 7, and I'd be surprised if this got even up to 4.5, really, regardless of the injury news. So no matter what, even if it's 3.5, I'd still feel pretty good there. So I would just wait.
Coming off 3 would surprise me quite a bit. I think it would probably get to 3 because it's minus 115 right now, but coming off 3 would be a pretty big surprise. So, laying the 2.5 with Texas, but do want to maybe hold off and get confirmation on their offensive line health before doing so there. Let's talk some ACC. You mentioned this one earlier on. That is Clemson against SMU right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. 2.5 point spread here once again in favor of SMU. Total in this game is 55.5. And Clemson did bounce back. And they got in this game thanks to the win for Syracuse over Miami, breaking my Cam Ward loving heart as a result in that one, making me as a former Syracuse resident quite happy, but still sad about the Cam Ward stuff. So Clemson backing their way in here. Can they bounce back and knock out SMU here, as you kind of alluded to earlier on?
Yeah, so I'm kind of avoiding taking any money line or spread here, just because this is a tough one to me. I could see it going either way, and it goes back to where I was mentioning I think there could be a lot of points in this. When you get into that, kind of can be a toss-up, and it's kind of who knows. If I expect a lot of points, I'd rather just go for the over here, and this looks even better because when I picked the over, it was 56.5, and now we're at 55.5. But I think Cade Klubnik for Clemson and Kevin Jennings for SMU, 2 good quarterbacks. I think we could get into a duel here. I really like each offense's matchup. For example, SMU, they run the ball a lot. Clemson is weaker against the run, so you can get in a situation there where their strength on offense, they can attack Clemson's weakness on defense. Looking at the other side of the ball, SMU is really, really good against the run, stopping it. They're allowing under 3 yards per carry. They're 3rd in the country in EPA allowed per carry. Clemson doesn't run the ball that much, though. Their pass play rate is really high, so they can kind of avoid just running into a brick wall over and over again. So just each offense's tendencies kind of play out the right way with this matchup, and it also helps that each team's in the top 3rd of the quickest paces in college football as well. So when you get into a situation where you could see these quarterbacks kind of get into a duel, if we get a lot of points, even with SMU running the ball a lot, they play pretty quick. I think we're going to see some points in this one, so I like the over.
You mentioned the lack of interest in running for Clemson. That also something that does quicken pace too. And if SMU's going to be good there, we're probably going to see just a ton of dropbacks out of Clemson in this game. And incompletions, I guess pass attempts in general, either move the ball more efficiently or they stop the clock if it's an incompletion. So that's exactly what you want. Over 55.5 is now minus 105. So not only did it come down a point, but it's also only minus 105 on the over. So it seems like there's been some interest on the under. If you were to guess why that has occurred, given that I agree with you, I think that this could be a pretty high-scoring game. I think that the setup for it is pretty good. Why do you think we've seen some movement towards the under in this one?
I would say I don't think either one of these defenses are horrible. I do think they have their strengths, and SMU has a legit run defense, and Clemson typically defends pretty well. So I think it's just on the basis of some people might just give more value in these defenses than others. And obviously, like I said, SMU runs the ball a lot. So, I mean, if they go out there and they're running for 7 yards a pop, why would you drop back at that point? And I think you would get scared of, maybe too much clock running at that point. I guess my reasoning for still expecting a quick pace is SMU is at about 9 yards per passing attempt. So I still like the potential of them hitting some deep shots throughout the game that would speed it up more. But I wouldn't be too shocked here if the defenses come out and play well. I would say that's probably why.
Yeah, I think that does make sense, the rationale, but I agree with you where the over is more enticing. So Clemson SMU, Riley likes over 55.5. That is -105. Let's talk now about the Big Ten championship game. That is Penn State taking on Oregon right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Oregon favored by 3.5. Total in this game up a tick. It's now 50.5. It was 49.5 earlier on. Penn State has been a team that has historically been awesome against lower tier competition, but Oregon is not that. So can they buck that trend here against a big time foe, or does Oregon cover the 3.5?
Yeah. So looking at where the public is going right now, I like my pick even more. As we can see here, you have over 80% of public on Oregon, which, there's good reasoning there, but it makes you a little nervous when practically everybody's taking it. But like you said, Penn State's not known for winning the big games. James Franklin's notorious for collapsing in games like this. But for that reason, I won't take Penn State straight up. But I do like them to keep it close and cover here. We get a good number where they just need to keep it within 3 points with the spread. My biggest reasoning here is while we can sit and look at, hey, Penn State's not winning the big games, et cetera, I don't think either one of these teams have had necessarily a good strength of schedule this year. Don't know how the Big Ten schedule folded this way, but Ohio State played Penn State, Oregon, and Indiana. And then those three teams only played Ohio State. So really, both of these teams, the only team they've played is Ohio State. And I still have questions about Oregon's offensive line. If they don't keep rolling and say they don't get where they want to get in the postseason, I think it could be because of that offensive line. When they played Michigan, they looked great. Credit to them on that. Michigan's defensive front has talent everywhere. Now, when they played Ohio State, and Ohio State wasn't getting much pressure on Oregon, had more questions about whether that was some failures from Ohio State or if Oregon's offensive line is that good. I think it was kind of a mixed bag there. Just because, Ohio State's pass rush has been pretty streaky all year. They didn't blitz Oregon at all. When they did blitz, Gabriel's numbers were way down. So the biggest factor for me in this game is when you look at Dylan Gabriel over at Pro Football Focus, his passing grade is 89 on the year. Really good, right? This drops all the way down to 58.9 when he's under pressure. And with him being a smaller quarterback, it doesn't surprise me. You get big guys in his face. He's not really going to be able to see downfield anymore. So numbers go way down. Penn State, of course, Abdul Carter is a monster. Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I'd say the biggest difference with Penn State's pass rush versus Michigan is just the edge rush presence they have. Michigan does have good edge rushers, of course, but it's just not on the level of Carter. I think Abdul Carter is probably the best defensive end in college football right now. So I'm really anxious to see how Oregon handles probably the best edge rushing they'll see so far up to this point. And like I mentioned, if you are getting pressure on Gabriel, he has shown a tendency to just see his numbers go way down. And then if you look at the other side of the ball as well, Oregon's defense is more prone to struggling against the run. I don't want to say struggling because it's just good overall, but Penn State just wants to run the ball a lot. Their offense has taken care of it. They're not really turning it over too much. Oregon's defense hasn't really forced too many takeaways this year either. So if you get into a situation here where Penn State can have some success on the ground, they're putting pressure on Gabriel on the other side of the ball. That also increases your likelihood for, say, like a strip sack or two. So I could see a situation here where Penn State can kind of make this ugly, maybe win the turnover battle and keep it really close. But I can't go with the money line just because, James Franklin is still coaching them. But Abdul Carter's just so good. I think that's my biggest thing here is how do you handle him?
So right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, to take the 3.5 with Penn State is plus 110. Again, total this game is 50.5. And you mentioned a lot about Penn State's defense, maybe keeping this game lower scoring. Any interest for you in the under when you consider those factors?
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of the reason I laid out, if that's how I think the game is going to go, I think it makes total sense to pair it with the under, especially when – I mean, Penn State, just if it goes their way, if they have a chance at winning this game, that's the only way I see it happening is if it's ugly. They don't have the guys on offense to put up the points like Oregon can, and I still have questions about Drew Aller, and he kind of just collapsed against Ohio State early in the year. So if you get into a situation where Oregon's scoring, then I don't really see where Penn State covers. So, yeah, I think it kind of goes together perfectly. If Penn State covers, the under's probably going to hit too.
Well, our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, is a big Penn State guy, so I'm sure he's ecstatic about you taking the 3.5. We'll ignore the part about the money line. Justin earmuffs for that part, but Riley is on the Penn State plus 3.5 minus 110. Oh, and potentially the under 50.5 at minus 110 as well. Okay, Riley, a lot of other good games this week as well. Any other bets stand out to you at FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, so mentioned early on that I like Arizona State a lot this week. Now I mentioned with the Oregon and Penn State how, going against the public kind of felt like a good spot. Well, and here I'm just, 80% of the public on Arizona State, but I'm going to do it anyways and take them to cover. But so, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. But Arizona State's 10-2 against the spread this year. They're 7-1 against the spread in the last 8. They're on a 5-game winning streak. They've covered 5 straight. So just all of that right there alone, it's kind of they've been really undervalued pretty much all season, and they keep proving that, they're better than what a lot of these lines are saying. But I'm just really worried about Iowa State's defense in this. They're much, much worse against stopping the run. They're 112th out of 134 teams and yards allowed per rushing attempts. They're giving up about 5.1 yards per carry. Not exactly a recipe for success against Arizona State. That is top 10% in the country in rush play rate. Cam Scatterbo is a beast. He's reached 150 rushing yards in 3 of their last 4 games. So Arizona State's whole identity on offense is pretty much run the ball. And when Iowa State struggles against that, I just have a hard time seeing where Arizona State doesn't come out ahead in this, especially when Iowa State, when they're winning, they're also very reliant on forcing turnovers. Well, Arizona State is even better at turnover margin, and they barely ever turn the ball over. And if they're having success on the ground, you got to think that even less likely they turn it over. So, I really like Arizona State here, and I think another line you could go to if it was to fold out this way is Cam Scatterbo's rushing prop. It's pretty high. It's 114.5, but he's averaging over 127 rushing on the season, so that gives some comfort. And honestly, I'll even get bold here, and I like his alt for 150 rushing. That okay. I think it's plus 210. And hear me out. So with this, plus 220, cool. But so when Arizona State has played Power 4 teams that are 89th or worse in yards allowed per carry, Scatterbo is averaging 187.5 rushing yards per game. So, and like I mentioned, Iowa State is 112th in this category. So, and this is not too small of a sample size. This is a sample size of about 5 games for Scatterbo. Yeah. So he's proven if he's playing a team that isn't good against the run, I mean, he will push for 200 yards. I think early in the year, can't remember who it was. I think it was Mississippi State they played, and he had around 240 rushing. So I could see him just taking over this game. And if Arizona State's having that success on the ground, good luck.
Well, and at the end too, like if they're up big, they're going to keep pushing because like it's going to matter for seeding and stuff like that. So you're not going to get a situation where, let's say they're up 14 in the fourth quarter, they're probably going to still be pedal to the metal, try to jack up that score too. And I think that's encouraging for a prop like this where you need 4 quarters of production. If you think that Arizona State does cover, you want all 4 quarters. And I think that you're more likely to get that given the way things shake out entering this weekend.
Absolutely. You don't have to worry about, say, if you're taking a passing prop here where if you're up 20 points, you're not going to throw as much. With this, You're going to run it no matter what. So, yeah, I'm all on the Sun Devils. I think they're one of the best stories in the country this year, and I think it keeps going this weekend.
I love it. So Scatabo, 150 plus yards, plus 220. Riley likes that. I will also just mention that he's 7-1 for 200 plus yards. That's not a recommendation from you. I'm not putting that on you, but I'm just throwing it out there that it is available as a line of FanDuel Sportsbook. I like that they're actually offering that 12-1 for 225 plus. So hey, if you want to have some fun, you have options to do so if you wanted to. Again, not a recommendation, just put it out there. It is not today at disposal, but Riley does also like Arizona State -2.5. That is currently -106 at FanDuel Sportsbook. That is all that we have here for today, breaking down the conference championship weekend. We're going to be back with you once again next week. We'll talk about implications of the bracket and then overall general betting thoughts on the bracket and the way things shook out once it's announced on Sunday. So next week, some thoughts on that coming your way here on the Covering the Spread podcast. That is all that we have for today, though. Back with you once again tomorrow, breaking down thoughts on NFL Week 14. Dubs Anderson with me there, and then Austin Swaim joins me on Friday talking NFL player props. That's 10 a.m. Eastern on the YouTube page, and the NFL Best Bet Show 4 p.m. Eastern for tomorrow. Subscribe to the YouTube page and enable notifications there to get notified as those go live each and every weekday. Riley, appreciate you as always. Enjoy the fun football this weekend. Enjoy hopefully some Cam Scatabo long rushes. We'll talk to you once again soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on. See how this bracket unfolds. There's a lot to figure out this weekend, that's for sure.
It's going to be fun for sure. I'm looking forward to it. You can find Riley on X at _Riley8. I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our Penn State fan and YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets across the conference championship games. We'll talk to you once again next week for the initial reactions to the bracket. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.